From the bay window of his Greenwich mansion, billionaire CEO Arthur Sterling watched the first light snow of Thanksgiving fall, feeling a chill that had nothing to do with the weather. He adjusted the knot of his silk tie, a nervous habit his new wife, Catherine, mistook for anticipation. But his mother, Beatrice, watching him from across the room, recognized it for what it was, the same weakness she'd crushed 10 years ago. The air in the grand hall smelled faintly of roasting turkey and cinnamon, but the atmosphere was sterile. A tall grandfather clock ticked loudly in the hall, its heavy tick-tock measuring the silence. Arthur, dressed impeccably but feeling trapped, let his gaze drift to the mantelpiece. He focused on a small carved wooden soldier, a relic of his childhood, and felt a familiar, dull pang of regret. In the adjoining dining room, Catherine was arranging heirloom silver, her movements quick and nervous. "It's our first Thanksgiving as a married couple, Beatrice," she said, her voice a little too bright. "It has to be perfect." Beatrice, wearing her classic pearl necklace, surveyed the table. Her posture was rigid, her smile polite but cold. "It's lovely, dear. You have effort." She turned her gaze to the window, looking out over the manicured lawns. "I do wish the neighborhood association hadn't approved the new landscaping at the gate. Such a modern design," she sighed. "It lowers the tone for everyone." Arthur winced, knowing modern was his mother's code for not our kind. He was about to speak, to offer some weak deflection, when the antique doorbell rang. Its chime echoed, sharp and insistent, through the cavernous foyer, interrupting Beatrice's complaint. Catherine visibly jumped, startled. Arthur freezes, his hand tightening on the wooden soldier. He feels a sudden, inexplicable dread, as if the past itself is standing on his doorstep. That cold, sterile perfection of the Sterling mansion just got interrupted. Arthur is frozen with dread, and we all know Beatrice is not a welcoming host. If you are still watching this video and feeling that chill, please comment with the number 8 below to let me know you're right here with us. This story is just getting started, and you won't want to miss the moment this family's facade shatters. If you haven't already, I truly encourage you to subscribe to the Black King channel and turn on that notification bell. Your support helps us continue to create great content to inform and inspire you. Now, let's see who is at that door. Arthur opened the grand oak door, and the curated perfection of his Thanksgiving day shattered like dropped crystal. Standing on his doorstep was Serena Lewis. He hadn't seen her in 10 years, not since the day his mother had offered her a check and called her a temporary, unfortunate distraction. She was poised, intelligent, and wore a simple but clearly expensive camel coat. She was not intimidated. She was observant. Beside her, clutching her hand, was a small boy, perhaps 9 years old. He was mixed race, with Serena's sharp intelligence in his eyes and Arthur's own jawline. The boy looked up at the towering ceiling with quiet curiosity. Arthur was speechless. He couldn't breathe. The cold draft from the open door battled the warm, cloying smell of roasting turkey from the kitchen. Beatrice, sensing Arthur frozen, swept forward, her polite hostess smile fixed firmly in place. Her pearl necklace seemed to glow with indignation. "May I help you?" she asked, looking past Serena, down the long, snow-dusted driveway. "Deliveries are always sent to the kitchen entrance. You're at the wrong door." Serena met Beatrice's gaze calmly, her stillness a stark contrast to the older woman's agitation. "Hello, Beatrice. I'm not making a delivery." She turned her eyes to Arthur, who looked pale, almost ill. "Hello, Arthur. This is Leo. He wanted to meet his father." Catherine, who had followed them into the foyer, dropped the small silver gravy boat she was holding. It clattered loudly on the marble floor, the sound echoing the tick-tock of the grandfather clock. "Father," she whispered, her face draining of all color. Beatrice stepped in front of Arthur, physically shielding him, her face a mask of aristocratic fury. "This is absurd. Arthur, tell this woman to leave our home. This instant." "She is not leaving," Arthur said, the words sounding weak and hollow, a pale echo of the man he should have been 10 years ago. He remembered the last time he defended Serena, the fight in his old Princeton dorm room, the ultimatum from his mother, and the deafening silence that followed when he chose his inheritance over his heart. His mother ushered them into the formal living room, a cold, museum-like space with a grand, unlit fireplace. The air was thick with unspoken history and the faint smell of lemon polish. Catherine, shaking, finally confronted her new husband. "Arthur, who is this woman? What does she mean, father?" Before Arthur could find his voice, Beatrice interrupted, taking control. "She is no one, Catherine. A failed artist from his college days. A mistake." She waved her hand dismissively, pointedly refusing to look at Leo. "Clearly she's here for money. It's always money with people like her." Serena's voice cut through the tension, calm and sharp. "Leo is 9 years old, Arthur. I left you voicemail after voicemail. I sent letters. But your number changed. Your secretary said you were unavailable 4 months." She looked directly at Beatrice. "I see now that your mother was simply more efficient than I realized." Leo, ignoring the adults, had wandered over to a large, abstract painting on the wall. "Mom," he said clearly, his young voice echoing in the stiff room, "that's a fake Rothko, isn't it? The color bleed is all wrong." Beatrice scoffed, her disdain for Serena now transferring to the child. "How dare you?" she sneered, her upper lip curling. "And how dare you bring this child here, claiming he's a sterling? We have standards. You should have known your place then, and you should know it now." Serena nodded slowly, her gaze hardening as if a final decision had just been made. "You are right, Beatrice. We should talk about standards and place. And perhaps we should talk about the $500 million donation you've been trying to secure for your museum." Beatrice just told Serena to know her place, but Serena just dropped a $500 million cliffhanger. The power in that room is about to shift, and you know it. If you're still watching this video and you are here for the moment Serena takes back her power, please comment with the number 8 below to let me know you're locked in. This is the kind of story we live for at the Black King channel. If you haven't subscribed yet, I highly recommend you subscribe and turn on that notification bell because you do not want to miss what happens next. Your support helps us continue to create great content that informs and inspires. Now, let's see how Beatrice handles this revelation. Beatrice Sterling let out a short, sharp laugh, the pearls on her neck quivering. "Donation? What in the world would you know about a $500 million donation?" Serena's calm, steady gaze was the same one she had used 10 years ago in Arthur's dorm room, when Beatrice had offered her a generous $5,000 check to disappear. This time, however, Serena held all the cards. "Are you here to ask for a donation?" Beatrice continued her tirade, her voice dripping with venom. "Is that the new angle? Using this child to beg? It's pathetic." "Mother, stop. Please," Arthur finally stammered, his voice barely a whisper. He saw the disaster unfolding, the same way he had seen it 10 years ago and done nothing. Serena ignored him, her focus entirely on Beatrice. "For 6 months," Serena said, her voice clear and precise, cutting through the tension. "Your museum board has been courting an anonymous donor for your new expansion. A donor who pledged $500 million. Beatrice's sneer faltered. Her hand went to her pearls. "That is confidential board business." "It was confidential," Serena corrected her. "I am Serena Lewis, founder and chair of the SL Foundation." She paused, letting the initials Serena/Leo sink in. "And I am your anonymous donor. Or rather, I was." The smell of roasting turkey, once appetizing, now seemed sickeningly rich in the sudden, suffocating silence. Catherine stared at Serena with a new, dawning awe. Arthur looked as if he'd been struck. Serena looked around the opulent room, her gaze finally resting on Beatrice. "I came here today to see if the Sterling family legacy was one worth investing in. You just gave me my answer. The donation is officially revoked, effective immediately." Beatrice Sterling, her hand clutching her pearls, collapses into a high-backed chair, her face ashen. For the first time in her life, she is completely, utterly silent. The silence that followed Serena's announcement was heavier and more absolute than the snow falling outside the leaded glass windows. Catherine, the new wife, looked from Arthur's weak, defeated face to Beatrice's stunned silence. She remembered Beatrice's earlier comments about standards and tone, and suddenly understood her new family wasn't just built on old money, but on a foundation of pure hate. The grandfather clock resumed its heavy tick-tock, sounding like a judgment in the dead air. Catherine was the first to move. She stood up, her voice shaking but clear. "Beatrice, you are a hateful, racist woman." "And Arthur," she turned to her husband, her eyes filled with contempt, "you are a coward." She deliberately walked to the antique coffee table, removed her large, new wedding ring, and placed it next to a silver candy dish with a quiet, final click. "I will not spend my first Thanksgiving or my life in a house built on racism and lies." "Catherine, wait." Arthur's plea was weak, automatic. She didn't look back. She walked out of the room, her footsteps echoing on the marble. The heavy front door opened and slammed shut, the sound echoing through the entire mansion, sealing the finality of her departure. Arthur was left standing in the middle of the room, trapped between his stunned mother, who had just lost $500 million, and his former love, who had just wielded that power. He finally looked at Serena, his eyes filled with a decade's worth of regret. "Serena, I'm sorry." Serena meets his gaze, her expression not angry, but profoundly sad. "Sorry for what, Arthur? For then, or for now? Are you sorry I lost you, or are you sorry you just lost $500 million? "I'm sorry," Arthur whispered, his voice cracking. "I'm sorry that my son, that Leo, had to see this." Serena looked at Arthur, the billionaire CEO she had once loved, and saw only a hollow shell. He was a man still hiding behind his mother, a man who had traded his own son for a legacy that just proved itself worthless. The acrid, bitter scent of the overcooked turkey now wafted from the kitchen, the smell of a ruined feast. She shook her head gently. "Don't be sorry you saw it. Be sorry you caused it. Your son saw a woman stand up to a bully. He saw what happens when people value bloodlines over character. That is a lesson worth learning." Serena knelt, zipping up Leo's coat. "Do you have any questions, sweetheart?" Leo looked at Arthur, then at the silent, defeated figure of Beatrice in the living room. "Why are they so angry, Mom?" "Because," Serena replied, her voice soft but firm, "they're afraid of anything they don't understand." Arthur made one last, desperate attempt. "Serena, please. Don't go." "Leo, I want to know him. I'll fix this." Serena stood, her hand on the heavy doorknob. "He came here today wanting a father. But a father is more than DNA, Arthur. It's courage. And you haven't had any in 10 years. She opened the front door. Serena and Leo walked out into the falling snow, their heads held high, leaving Arthur alone in the massive, silent foyer. He was a billionaire with nothing. Arthur Sterling, the CEO, was left with his horrified mother, his cold Thanksgiving dinner, and the ringing silence of a $500 million mistake. He had his legacy, and it was empty. In the end, the snow fell on a silent mansion, a monument to the choices that define us. The story of the Sterling family reminds us that true legacy isn't built from wealth or bloodlines, but from courage and character. When we judge others based on what we see on the outside, their color, their past, or their status, we risk losing everything that truly matters. Like a hidden treasure, kindness and integrity are often found where we least expect them, waiting to be seen not with our eyes, but with our hearts.